There is an organ in your body that can determine where much of the glucose from your last meal goes. When this organ is active, it can pull fuel out of your bloodstream, store it safely, and help reduce the conditions that encourage fat to collect deep inside your abdomen. When it becomes smaller and inactive, the pancreas works harder, the liver receives more overflow, and belly fat becomes more difficult to lose. It is not your stomach, it is not your thyroid, and it is not a newly discovered fat-burning gland. This hidden organ is spread throughout your body, attached to your bones, and responsible for every step you take. It is your skeletal muscle. Most people think of muscle as something used for lifting weights or changing appearance. But biologically, muscle is also one of the body's largest glucose management systems. And after middle age, ignoring it can quietly change what happens around your waist. The important switch is not simply having more muscle. It is whether that muscle is being recruited often enough to demand fuel. Once that switch is activated, an ordinary action such as standing up from a chair can become part of a much larger metabolic story. When people want to lose belly fat, they often begin with the belly itself. They perform crunches, buy abdominal devices, or search for a movement that burns fat from the waist. Strengthening the abdominal muscles can improve stability and function, but it does not force the body to remove fat from that exact location. Fat loss is controlled by whole-body energy balance, hormones, genetics, sleep, age, diet, and physical activity. You can strengthen one area, but you cannot choose the precise fat cells that release their stored energy first. Another common belief is that belly fat is simply the result of weak willpower or eating too much. Energy intake matters, but it is not the entire explanation. Two people can gain fat differently because their bodies differ in muscle mass, insulin sensitivity, sleep, stress, medication, age, sex, and genetics. You are not wrong to focus on food. You are only missing one of the largest destinations for the energy in that food. To understand why muscle matters, imagine your bloodstream immediately after a meal. Carbohydrates are broken into glucose, which enters the blood. Your pancreas detects the change and releases insulin. Insulin acts like a key, helping glucose move into cells that can use or store it. The liver accepts part of the incoming fuel and stores some of it as glycogen. Fat tissue can store energy as triglycerides, but skeletal muscle offers an enormous storage and burning system distributed across your legs, hips, back, chest, shoulders, and arms. When muscle is sensitive to insulin, glucose can move efficiently from the blood into muscle cells. Some is burned immediately, some is packed into glycogen, a form of stored carbohydrate that can be used the next time you walk, climb stairs, carry groceries, or perform resistance exercise. Inside each muscle cell are transport proteins called GLUT4. Think of them as doors that allow glucose to enter. Insulin can signal these doors to move toward the surface of the cell. But muscle contraction has another way of activating them. When a muscle contracts, it creates an urgent message. Energy is needed now. Cellular sensors, including a system involving AMP, respond to that demand. More glucose doors move into position, and the muscle can take in glucose through a pathway that is not entirely dependent on insulin. That is the hidden biological switch. It does not require a punishing workout. It begins whenever enough muscle fibers are recruited to create an energy demand. Walking activates the legs and hips. Carrying bags activates the hands, arms, shoulders, and trunk. Standing from a chair recruits large muscles in the thighs and buttocks. Resistance training creates an even stronger signal by asking the muscles to work against a load. Now imagine the opposite condition. You finish a meal and remain seated for several hours. The food is being digested, glucose is entering the blood, and insulin is rising. But the largest muscles in your body are nearly silent. The pancreas continues releasing insulin to move glucose out of the bloodstream. The liver receives and manages incoming fuel. Fat cells remain available as storage sites. If this pattern happens repeatedly, large meals followed by long periods of inactivity, the metabolic traffic has fewer active destinations. This does not mean sitting after one meal creates belly fat. It means that repeated inactivity can reduce the body's ability to handle fuel efficiently. Over time, muscle can become less responsive to insulin. The pancreas may compensate by releasing more. Elevated insulin does not magically create fat from nothing. but it is a sign that the body is working harder to manage incoming energy. At the same time, the liver may continue releasing glucose when it should be reducing its output. More circulating fatty acids may reach the liver. Fat can begin accumulating in places where it creates greater metabolic risk, including around the abdominal organs and inside the liver. The fat directly beneath the skin is called subcutaneous fat. It is the soft layer you can often pinch. Visceral fat lies deeper, packed around internal organs. Both store energy, but visceral fat is more strongly associated with insulin resistance, abnormal blood lipids, inflammation, and cardiovascular risk. Muscle does not reach into the abdomen and physically pull visceral fat away. Its influence is indirect but powerful. Active muscle creates a destination for glucose and fatty acids. Better trained muscle usually has more capacity to store glycogen, use fuel, and respond to insulin. Regular activity also raises total energy expenditure and supports the calorie deficit required for fat loss. Muscle is not just a storage tank. It also communicates. Contracting muscles release signaling molecules, often called myokines. Scientists are still working out the effects of individual myokines, but the larger message is clear. Muscle behaves like an endocrine organ. When it contracts, it sends chemical signals that can influence other tissues, including the liver, fat tissue, blood vessels, immune system, and brain. This is why describing muscle as nothing more than body armor misses its most interesting role. It is metabolically active tissue, participating in a whole-body conversation. The conflict becomes more serious with age. Beginning in adulthood, people can gradually lose muscle, especially when they are inactive, eat too little protein, experience illness, or spend time on bed rest. The decline is not always visible. Body weight may remain the same, while muscle decreases and fat increases. A bathroom scale cannot distinguish those tissues. A person may weigh exactly what they weighed several years ago, but have less muscle, more abdominal fat, and lower strength. This creates a difficult cycle. Less muscle can mean less capacity to store and use glucose. Lower strength makes movement harder. When movement feels harder, people move less. Reduced activity lowers energy expenditure and weakens the signal telling the body to preserve muscle. Belly fat can then increase, even when the scale changes very little. But this cycle can be interrupted. Imagine an older adult finishing dinner and taking a short walk. During the first few minutes, the leg muscles begin contracting. Blood flow increases. Glucose from the meal is beginning to enter the bloodstream, and the active muscles start requesting fuel. As the walk continues, glucose transport into the muscle rises. The muscles use a combination of glucose and fatty acids. The walk does not erase dinner, but it changes where part of the meal's energy is going. Instead of leaving the legs inactive during the glucose rise, the body now has a large active destination for that fuel. After the walk ends, the metabolic effect does not disappear instantly. The exercised muscles need to restore the fuel they used. Insulin sensitivity can remain improved for a period after activity, although the size and duration of that effect vary with exercise intensity, fitness, meal composition, health status, and medication. Now move forward several days. The person repeats the walk after meals, interrupts long sitting periods, and performs a few simple resistance exercises. The muscle fibers receive two related messages. The first message is immediate: use fuel. The second message is protective: this tissue is necessary, so maintain it. Resistance exercise provides a particularly useful signal because it challenges the muscle to produce force. At first, strength can improve before large changes in muscle size occur. The nervous system becomes better at recruiting existing fibers. Movements feel more coordinated. Standing from a chair may become easier. Stairs may feel less demanding. This early improvement matters because it makes future activity more likely. The person does not have to wait for visible muscle growth before receiving a functional benefit. After several weeks, consistent training can improve the muscle's capacity to store glycogen and respond to insulin. Depending on the program, nutrition, age, and starting condition, muscle size may begin increasing. But the scale may not fall quickly. That can be frustrating. Glycogen stored in muscle holds water, and resistance training can produce temporary fluid changes as tissues recover. A person might lose some fat while gaining a small amount of lean tissue and water. Body weight could remain nearly unchanged even as waist size, strength, and glucose control improve. This is where many people abandon the strategy too early. They believe nothing is happening because the scale did not reward them. But the scale cannot show that a muscle cell is responding better to insulin. It cannot show glucose being stored as glycogen instead of remaining in the blood. It cannot show that the same flight of stairs now requires less effort. It cannot distinguish a smaller waist with stronger legs from a lighter body with less muscle. Over the following months, the larger pattern becomes more important. Muscle training alone does not guarantee major loss of visceral fat, and different studies produce different results depending on the exercise program and the people involved. Aerobic exercise is also valuable and may be especially effective for reducing visceral and liver fat in some situations. The strongest approach is rarely a battle between walking and strength training. Walking raises daily movement and helps use fuel. Aerobic training challenges the heart, lungs, and large muscle groups for longer periods. Resistance training protects or builds the tissue responsible for much of the body's glucose disposal. Nutrition determines whether enough energy is being removed from storage over time. These parts work together. The liver is one of the first organs to feel the difference. When active muscle takes up more glucose, the liver has less metabolic traffic to manage. Improved insulin sensitivity can help the liver receive a clearer signal to reduce glucose production after meals. Regular exercise may also help reduce liver fat, particularly when accompanied by appropriate nutrition and gradual fat loss. The pancreas benefits in a different way. If muscle responds more effectively to insulin, the pancreas may not need to release as much insulin to manage the same glucose load. This does not mean exercise repairs every damaged insulin-producing cell, nor does it replace diabetes medication. It means that responsive muscle can reduce part of the demand placed on the system. Fat tissue is also affected. During activity and between meals, fatty acids can be released and used as fuel. But releasing fat from a cell is not the same as permanently losing it. If those calories are replaced later through overeating, the fat can be stored again. This is why a workout that burns energy can be canceled by an unconscious increase in food intake. Exercise may increase appetite in some people, while others experience little change. The body is always trying to defend energy balance. The brain participates through appetite, reward, fatigue, and motivation. Poor sleep can increase hunger and make highly palatable foods more appealing. Stress can disrupt routines and reduce spontaneous movement. A tired person may complete a workout but spend the rest of the day sitting, partly offsetting the expected increase in energy expenditure. Cortisol is often blamed as if it directly creates belly fat every time you feel stressed. The reality is more complex. Cortisol is an essential hormone that helps mobilize energy. Chronic stress, poor sleep, emotional eating, and inactivity can work together in ways that favor abdominal fat gain. But cortisol is not a simple belly fat switch. Exercise itself is a controlled stress. Applied in a manageable dose, it tells the body to adapt. Applied without recovery, adequate nutrition, or appropriate progression, it can create fatigue, pain, and declining performance. The real turning point is reached when muscle use becomes frequent enough to influence daily energy handling and progressive enough to preserve or increase strength. There is no universal number of days when this happens. Someone returning from illness may respond to chair stands and short walks. Another person may require heavier resistance to create a meaningful challenge. Age does not eliminate the ability to adapt, but it changes the strategy. Recovery may take longer. Joint limitations may require different exercises. Protein distribution becomes more important. Balance and fall risk must be considered. The best program is not the hardest one. It is the one that safely challenges the muscle and can be repeated. The first common mistake is relying only on abdominal exercises. Crunches can strengthen part of the trunk, but they use far less total muscle than walking, squatting to a chair, rowing, pushing, carrying, or climbing. If the goal is metabolic improvement, large muscle groups deserve attention. The second mistake is performing only cardio while allowing strength to decline. Cardio is excellent for the heart, endurance, and energy expenditure. But after midlife, Some form of resistance exercise helps protect muscle, strength, bones, and physical independence. Walking and strength training solve different parts of the problem. The third mistake is cutting calories too aggressively. Severe restriction may produce rapid weight loss, but part of that loss can come from water and lean tissue. If protein is inadequate and muscle is not challenged, the body has less reason and fewer materials to preserve muscle. This can produce a smaller body without the metabolic improvement the person expected. Weight returns easily when the diet ends, while lost muscle can be difficult to rebuild. The fourth mistake is training hard every day while sleeping poorly. Muscle does not become stronger during the exercise itself. Exercise creates the signal. Recovery allows adaptation. Persistent soreness, declining performance, unusual exhaustion, joint pain, disrupted sleep, or loss of enthusiasm can indicate that the program is progressing too quickly. The fifth mistake is evaluating success only through body weight. Track waist circumference under similar conditions, how clothing fits, walking endurance, chair stand ability, and strength. If your clinician monitors glucose, blood pressure, triglycerides, or liver health, those measures may reveal changes the scale cannot. A practical starting plan does not need to be complicated. Begin by walking for 10 to 15 minutes after the meal, that is usually followed by the most sitting. On other parts of the day, stand and move briefly, instead of remaining seated for several uninterrupted hours. Add resistance exercise on 2 or 3 non-consecutive days each week, if your health and current ability permit it. Choose movements that train major muscle groups: a supported chair stand for the legs, a wall push-up for the chest and arms, a resistance band row for the back, a gentle hip hinge, and a safe carrying movement. Start with a resistance that allows controlled movement and good form. The final repetitions should feel challenging, but not painful or desperate. As the movement becomes easy, progress gradually by adding repetitions, increasing the resistance slightly, or improving the range of motion. Nutrition must support the signal. Include a meaningful source of protein at each meal, rather than saving almost all of it for dinner. Choose fish, eggs, poultry, beans, lentils, tofu, plain dairy, or other foods appropriate for your preferences and medical needs. Combine them with vegetables, whole fruit, minimally processed carbohydrates, and healthy fats. Protein needs vary with body size, activity, health, and kidney function. If you have chronic kidney disease or another condition requiring dietary restrictions, ask a qualified healthcare professional before making a major increase. Do not remove all carbohydrates in an attempt to force fat burning. Muscle can use carbohydrate effectively, particularly during activity. The more useful goal is to improve carbohydrate quality, control portions, limit added sugar, and create an eating pattern that supports gradual fat loss without sacrificing muscle. If you use insulin or medication that can lower blood glucose, exercise may change your glucose response. Do not stop or adjust medication on your own. Discuss exercise timing, glucose monitoring, and symptoms of low blood sugar with your healthcare team. People with chest pain, severe shortness of breath, uncontrolled blood pressure, recent surgery, active foot ulcers, serious balance problems, or rapidly worsening weakness should receive individualized guidance before starting a new program. So what is the hidden organ that secretly influences belly fat? It is skeletal muscle, not because muscle can command fat to disappear from your waist, but because it changes what your body does with glucose, how strongly it responds to insulin, how much energy it uses, and how well it preserves physical function as you age. Every walk gives muscle fuel to use. Every safe resistance session tells it to remain. Every protein-rich meal supplies material for recovery. Over time, those repeated signals can make it easier to reduce visceral fat while protecting the tissue that helps keep it from returning. If your waist has been difficult to change, do not look only at the fat you want to lose. Look at the muscle you need to protect. Comment with the movement you can begin this week, and subscribe for more science-based explanations of what is really happening inside your body.